Okay, well, as Cindy mentioned, my name is Heather Lytle, and today we're going to be talking about expanding your reach and increasing your earnings with social media. Now, at the end of the day, what we're really going to be talking about, and I hate to give away the farm before we even get started, but this is what I really want you to remember. Everything that we talk about today, it's about becoming knowable, likable, and trustable. So these are the things that we can do to create our online presence where people really want to do business with us. So just like we are in this room and we're getting to know each other, we're able to do that online and build these connections with our clients and our customers if we just really know where to find them. Okay? I'm looking at Scott because we had some technical problems. So. Awesome. Okay, it worked. We love it when technology works. Okay, when we talk about trust, this tends to be one of those words that we talk at like a buzzword. Like everybody's talking about trust and everybody talks about authenticity, and we all have these things in the marketing space that we like to talk to make us feel really good. As a marketing major, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When we're talking about online trust, it goes far beyond buzzword because the reality is this is really how we are forming our decisions, our buying decisions today. It happens both online and offline, and I want to spend just a few minutes, and I promise you we won't go through a ton of statistics today, but just to make you understand a little bit about what has happened in the past 5 years or so in the way that we make decisions. If we think about what happens offline, so how many of you have made have bought a phone or a TV or made any kind of purchase in the past, say, 2 or 3 months? Anybody? Baby gear, I'm sure that you guys did. Okay, and Scott, you raised your hand. What did you buy?
A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Okay, well, odds are, well, you're a pretty savvy.
This Steelers backpack just came yesterday for my son.
There you go.
A bicycle. He's got a birthday this month.
Oh, so definitely he's been buying a lot of stuff. But my guess is for most of us who did that, we asked people, okay, what do you recommend? I know as I'm shopping for this one, I'm asking everybody who will tell me what's your favorite this or that or whatever the case may be. We look to others for influence, and we say that of that, for 71% of us, that influence that we receive from either friends, neighbors, or family members, those really have a strong impact on how we make our buying decisions. The same thing is as we are talking with friends and colleagues, that the average person mentions a specific brand over 90 times in any given kind of exchange or of a week. So when we talk about brands, and we'll be talking a lot about this today, I want you to really remember that even as we look at statistics, we're not talking about the Coca-Colas of the world. We're not talking about the Pepsis of the world. We're talking about the local real estate company. We're talking about insurance. We're talking about dental care, or where do I need to take my goldfish if he's sick, or whatever the case may be, okay? So these are very applicable things that are happening in our business. Now, online, it's a little bit different. What's happening is our sphere of influence has really changed. Whereas before, you would maybe talk to, again, a colleague, somebody in your office, a friend, or a neighbor. Well, that's really expanded. So now we're trusting the judgment and opinion of people, in many cases, who we've never, ever met. So we go online and we Google. And my guess is, Scott, anything that you bought, you've read some reviews about it, right?
Yes.
And those have shaped your buying decisions. If you have a 1-star review on Amazon and you're talking about something that's for the safety of your child, that's not going to be something that you're going to trust your buying decision to, right? We need to think about these kinds of things because remember, as your customers are looking to you in making those decisions about who it is that they want to do business with, these are the kinds of behaviors that they're looking at. So let's take, beyond looking at statistics, let's look at a pretty realistic picture of what that looks like for us. So if you all have noticed, for most of us, what's the first thing that we do when we are looking for something? We go to a search engine. Google it is now part of our vernacular, right? What has happened is the way that we receive information as a consumer has really changed. So for example, when I search for something, if I'm logged in to my, for example, my Google account, my search results are going to be very specific for me. They would be very different for Shannon based on her interactions in her communities. So what I mean by that is the information that is available to us as we're researching to make these decisions are filtered by those that we're connected with. So for example, as I search, my results are brought by those that I'm connected with on Twitter or those that I'm connected with on Facebook. It highlights the things that those people who I clearly trust have already shared, okay? So if you as a business owner, you're already thinking, well, wait a second, it's important for me to be building these kind of communities because that's how people are going to find information about me. If you have spent any time online and have been to, in the past week, maybe you're researching some of the things that are happening in Japan or how you can help, and you'll see that almost every site that you go to, whether it's CNN or the Daily Oklahoman, it has these little buttons. Facebook like, share on Twitter, email to a friend. The way that we process information and the way that we share information has gotten much more social in nature. So for us as business owners and executives, we really need to be savvy enough to identify that if we're smart, we can really tap into this. As we just talked about the definition of marketing. So really what we're talking about is the idea of being knowable, likable, and trustable, but converting that through the use of social media in a way that really helps our bottom line and helps us grow our business. So one last definition is to understand what social media is. Now, how many of you have ever tried to figure out the definition of social media? We were talking about it before we got started, right? There's a ton that's out there, and you'll see these very complicated definitions that will say, things like, at the most basic sense, social media is this fundamental shift in how people read and share information and blah, 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 blah. All that you need to know is this. Social media is simply people connecting and sharing information. That's it. It is the space where your customers and clients, if we're thinking about this in terms of growing our business, it is the space where your customers and clients, where they're sharing experiences, where they're creating influence, and most importantly, it's where they're making their buying decisions. Taking that a little bit further, social media simply changes the conversation from a static one-way communication. So you can think of that in terms of traditional direct mail, or have any of you ever done cold calling sales calls? Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your customers don't want that anymore. What they do want is this dynamic two-way conversation where they feel that they are a part of your business and that they have more information to make positive decisions for themselves. Okay? So take all of the complicated definitions that are out there, and that's all you need to know. Social media simply changes the conversation from a static one-way conversation, which your customers don't want, to this dynamic two-way conversation, which they do want. So let's talk for a second about kind of the old rules and the new rules, and let's think about what this means for us in our business. So under the old rules, and remember, when we talk about old in terms of social media, we're talking like 5 years ago, okay? I mean, we're not talking decades ago. We're talking 5 years ago and literally changing every single day, which we'll talk about in a moment. But under the old rules, we were very limited geographically. So for example, if I was looking to buy a home in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I was relocating from New York, I would be very limited in the kinds of information that I could get, or the kinds of connections that I could make with those service providers who could help me, right? We were very limited based on our geography. We had very specific hours of operation. Word of mouth was spread through environments like this where people congregated and were asking questions. Hey, I'm looking for a good pediatric dentist. Who are you recommending? Or I'm looking for a good representation for this particular issue that I'm having, whatever the case may be. That's how word of mouth was generated. Our marketing dollars, they went to radio and TV. All of that said, for as much as those were kind of the old rules, the clear factor for us as business people is we really felt like we were in charge of our messaging, right? We were in control of the dollars that were spent. We had control of what people were saying about us. We could minimize any negative word of mouth by isolating it very quickly. Today, it's really changed. Today, as we already talked about, your customers, they're Googling you, they're researching you, they're reading those reviews about you before they ever even contact you. So your customers and your clients are researching you before they ever pick up the phone or walk into your office. It's important that we realize that. Even if we're a local business, we're competing globally. So if I have a product that I'm selling and whether or not I want to be, I'm competing with the Amazons of the world. I'm competing with the Walmarts of the world because we have access to that information 24 hours a day. Word of mouth can be spread at any time, good or bad, and is no longer limited, again, to just those connections that we know. So all of these things that we can think about under the new rules may feel a little bit overwhelming to us because it feels like we may be losing a little bit of control. But the reality is, as long as you are savvy and applying some of the things that we'll talk about today, you are still in control of your message. Excuse me. Anybody feeling overwhelmed by the concept of social media? I know Shannon is we'll get Shannon there. But the reality is just, to think about it in terms contextually of what we do in our business. So think about it this way. What would you do if you had a sales team? Lori, right? You are in sales, correct? Okay. If your sales team just left every possible prospect on the table, or worse, gave it to your competition, right? It would be devastating. That's what's happening in social media. If we are not tapped into what is happening online, that's what we're doing. Every day, from millennials to boomers, people are having conversations about your industry, about the services that you can provide, about your competition, and even very likely about you and your business. So your job is really to tap into that, understand how to find them, and most importantly, understand how to react. Is there any of you in this room who is thinking, okay, this is all fine and good, but none of this really matters to me? Well, good. We've already done our job. I can go home now. No, I'm kidding. A few important things to remember. If you have a business and you say you're in a consulting practice, you're working with businesses, you have a very targeted demographic, I would guess, right? You may think my demographic is not active on Facebook, or if they are, they're just sharing pictures of their kids and, or watching their kids and seeing who their kids are friends with. They're not using it to make decisions. Some of the statistics are really staggering. Remember that 50% of the population is under 30. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, since I'm not a part of that demographic, unfortunately. This is an entire generation that has never known life without a cell phone. This is an entire generation who have not gone through higher education without access to internet through multiple locations, okay? This is a completely different environment than what, not to point any fingers, but for many of us have experienced in our lifetimes, okay? So we have to be living and playing exactly the way that our customers are. If you deal with an older demographic, consider the fact that the demographic of 50 to 64-year-olds, that demographic increased their social media usage in 2010 by 88%, okay? That's huge. The demographic over 65 saw double-digit increases. So no matter who it is that your business is serving, this is where they're living and playing. Maybe you are in a business where you need to make some hiring decisions in the next year. Think about the fact that somebody joins LinkedIn every single second. Again, the numbers are very, very powerful. Think about the way that we, again, are processing our information. 2/3 of top sites in the United States are integrated with Facebook. We see this changing and increasing every single day. So the way that people are processing information, no longer through necessarily search engines, but directly through their news feed on Facebook, this is where they're living and playing. So you may be thinking, well, that's all fine and good, but what do all of these people want? For me as a business owner, or for me as an executive, what is it that I need to provide for my clients and customers? At the end of the day, they want something of value. They really want to feel that they're a part of your business. They want to feel like they are special amongst all of the customers and clients that you have, that they're special and you're talking to them. They really want to feel like they have a targeted specific solution to their targeted specific problem. And they really want to understand the benefits of working for you. They don't just want a laundry list of what it is that you do. So it seems like your customers and clients are asking for a lot, right? We can manage it really easily with a few things. We're going to talk about 5 things that you need to know, and then really 5 things that will bring it all together. But before we leave this, I would just want to ask, anybody notice a theme here? Them, right? Exactly. Social media is all about them. It is not all about you. The quicker that you understand that, the higher impact your efforts will have. Okay, so first I want to talk about the concept of listening. When we talk about listening in social media, we have this unprecedented opportunity. And we were talking before we began today about some traditional marketing efforts and how some people will drop just really a lot of money in some traditional advertising and marketing efforts without really understanding what they should be looking for, what they should be gauging for, or how to identify success. The beautiful thing about social media, we'll talk about this more in a moment, is you have the ability to listen, to find very targeted prospects and leads in a way that we couldn't have even dreamt about even just 5 years ago. So let's look at an example. Let's talk about Twitter for a second. Let's say, Doctor, is it Coleman?
Cold iron.
Cold iron? Okay. Let's say that you are in the market, you need to increase, you looked at your year-over-year service provider, services that have been provided, and you are missing out on the terrier market between 12 and 15 pounds, or whatever the case may be. You can very specifically, you can use a tool like Twitter, if you're savvy enough to know how to listen, to find those very specific types of clients that you're looking for. So you could go to something like search.twitter.com and you can type in, okay, I want to find people who are talking about terriers. And I want to find people who are talking about terriers within a 10-mile radius of 73034. Well, it's going to pull up everybody who's talking about their terrier within that radius in real time. So if you are savvy and somebody says, poor little Digger, Cindy's dog, poor little Digger is having this problem again, I don't know what to do. Well, you or your staff would be able to immediately jump on that, be able to provide information, be an expert. So when it comes time for her to make that decision of who she's going to bring little Digger to, well, my goodness, you've just immediately opened the door. She immediately trusts you because you took the time to work with her, okay? So you can think about that in terms of very targeted keywords. You can think about that in very, very targeted geolocations, or very targeted geographical areas. We can find people to build a community around. Or maybe it is even that we have a competitor. So maybe there is a vet's office up the street who is really tapping into this whole social media thing, and the staff over there says, you know what? I really like what they're doing. Well, we can mimic what other people are doing and help build the same kind of community, do it even bigger and better, build lasting relationships, but not making it nearly as intensive or as difficult, okay? So that would be an example of truly listening through a tool like Twitter. A few things to keep in mind, especially since not nearly as many hands were raised when we asked how many of you were on Twitter versus Facebook. A few things to remember. First and foremost is to make sure that you complete your profile. And when I say complete it, I mean complete it. Not just complete it, but optimized. When we think about the ways that we would be looking for targeted prospects, other people will be looking for us in the same way. So we need to make sure that our profiles are complete in a way that address every part of our products and services that somebody could possibly be looking for. You guys are busy, and there's no doubt that you're busy. Use tools that are available to help you manage this process, to where you can pre-schedule your tweets, create targeted keyword lists so that you have, every time somebody's talking about a terrier, it's popping up for you. A tool that I recommend is something called Hootsuite. You also want to make sure that you're listing yourselves in directories, just like you would the phone book or just like you would any other location where somebody would be searching for information about you. As I mentioned, you also have the opportunity to mimic others. There's 2 tools that I suggest to do that. One is gotwitter.com and one is called tweepy.com.
And those are what again? I mean,
Those 2 that I just listed, those are they're management tools that would help you mimic what somebody else is doing. So if you wanted to, if we were in complementary businesses and you knew that I'd been on Twitter for a while and I had a following that was very targeted to something that you would want to do, well, you can choose to follow or build a relationship with some of those exact same community members. Okay, let's talk a little bit about becoming an expert. There is no, and for those of you especially who are in service-based businesses, so whether that be a law firm, whether that be realty, wherever we are in industries where people are looking to us for information that we have and nobody else does, social media provides an unprecedented opportunity to really differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. A great way to use the concept of listening is to listen for questions and to be able to provide answers. So we can log on, how many of you, we're active on LinkedIn? LinkedIn Questions is one of the most underutilized tools that are out there, particularly for those of us who are in business-to-business relationships. Make yourself a calendar and say, okay, once a week I'm going to log in and I'm going to find people who are talking about a specific topic that's interesting to me. You all are getting ready to do an estate planning workshop coming up, correct? So maybe it is that you are leading up to that event, you're going to start targeting people who are talking about those topics or those that are related. Once you provide that answer, it's publicly available, it establishes you as an expert, and again, builds to that idea of knowability, likability, and trustability. Okay. So a few things about that. If there are key topics that are relevant to you, I highly suggest, again, you guys are busy, and we want to make sure that this is as efficient as possible for you. I am all about automating the use of social media to make it efficient. Schedule alerts for those keywords that are important to you. A site that I recommend is socialmention.com. How many of you are familiar with Google Alerts? Okay. That would be something else that you would use your Google account for. Social Mention is similar in the idea that you would enter in keywords and you'll receive a notice anytime somebody is talking about yourself, your competition, your key players, your industry, etc. What Social Mention does, though, is allows you to choose what networks you're interested in. So let's say, for example, you want to find people who are talking about those things on Facebook, or you want to find people who are talking about those topics on Twitter. Social Mention allows you to be much more targeted about those. Okay.
Heather, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I know some businesses that use some of these services, and it seems like they are constantly, bombarded with, updates and I mean.
It drives you crazy?
I was about to say, you get to the point where, what would you suggest as an expert as to what is too much or what's the balance? Where you lose like the personal feel.
Absolutely. Hold that thought until the next slide,
Okay.
because that's actually a pretty great transition. But one thing that I would tell you about that is to keep a calendar, make a plan. So you may say, okay, we are going to plan that we are going to update 3 times a day or 4 times a day. It depends on what your business is in a large case, and then it also depends if those are conversations that you're having with other people. But keep a calendar. Again, I keep saying it, you guys are busy. My guess is there's some things that if they're not written down or plugged into your BlackBerry, you're not going to do. Put them on a calendar. I call it an editorial calendar, just like you would have for traditional public relations. Give it to your staff person, have somebody in your office who is dedicated to do this, and live and breathe by it. Use that expertise for all of the other things that we've talked about and we're focusing on today. The other very beneficial thing about listening in this way is we're able to use it for backlinks and increase traffic to our website. So there's a very strong search engine optimization component to taking the time to do this. And then finally, prepare standard responses. If you know that if there is a pretty standard response that you would give when somebody asks you about estate planning, because you know that it's so varied from person to person, and you know that there's certain, varies by states, etc. Prepare a canned response, cut and paste, so it shows that you're listening, you're reacting, but you're not having to take the time each time to type it out and craft that message. Okay, how many of you are iPhone users? Okay, how many of you are Mac users? A few of you. What's the difference between AT&T and Mac? Apple.
What do you
Like if you have a problem with your iPhone, if you had your choice, are you going to call AT&T or are you going to go into the Mac store?
I'll call the Mac store, or I'll go to the Mac store and talk to somebody face to face.
Right, why?
Because I don't have to look at all these buttons.
They're nice, right? It's the same, being human, it's the same reason that we say, thanks for calling, or have a great day, and we have that smile on our face. It's that human interaction that helps us grow our business, right? That should not be lost, even though we're doing so many things online. So I want you to remember to be human. A few things to keep in mind is when we talk about this, when we talk about the kind of information that we want to be sharing online, we want to remember that we need to be telling our story, not selling. So in answer to your question about what's appropriate and what's not, there's no quicker way to turn off your audience than blatant self-promotional sales messages. There's a lot of ways that you can get that message across without saying, hey, we're having 10% special today every 30 minutes or whatever the case may be. And people do that. Next, as we already talked about, and it's worth repeating, we want to make sure that social media is all about them, not all about us. So it's very important to make sure that we are constantly listening, we're constantly making sure that our customers and our clients have their needs being met. Again, if we can take ourselves out of the equation with the realization we're doing this to grow our business, but if we can take that out of the equation where we're doing it in a self-promotional way, that's when we'll see results. And then finally, we really want to offer a solution. There's so much noise through social media. For those of you who are active on Facebook, you may think to yourselves, I know we all have friends like this. I don't care what you just had for lunch. I'm sure that Caesar salad and tomato soup was fantastic. I don't care. You need to be strategic. You don't want to be a part of the noise. You really want to make sure that you are offering a solution. So a couple of things to keep in mind. A benchmark that I suggest to my clients is to keep in mind the 60-20-20 rule. 60% of the things that you share should be informational. Excuse me. 20% should be conversational, and then 20% should be self-promotional. So let's take a look at a few of these. First, Scott, I'm going to ask you, what time is it?
12:32.
Perfect. Okay. First, let's talk about informational. One of my favorite authors on the topic of social media and new media marketing is a man by the name of Mitch Joel. If you have not read his book, 6 Pixels of Separation, I would put it on your must-read book list. He's fantastic. In any case, this is just a screenshot of his Twitter stream. Now, as you'll see, he is sharing information. When I say sharing information, it's not just there's a great article in the New York Times, or I've just created this blog post about, I keep picking on estate planning, I'm just pushing your workshop that you have coming up. You may do a blog post that helps to answer questions about estate planning. So those are all things that are informational. Informational is also sharing information, again, that doesn't really give you an immediate impact to your business. So for example, I live very close to where you all work. You may see me send a tweet that says something along the lines of, I'm looking for Mitch Joel's 6 Pixels of Separation, where should I go? You all may say, well, there's this fabulous little bookstore called Best of Books, 2 doors down from us, right? It is like 2 doors down from you guys. They're fantastic. You should go in and talk to Mary. Okay. That does nothing to help your business, right? Unless maybe I go there and I see you for the first time. But what it does tell me, again, A, you're listening, and B, you're taking the time to help me. that's pretty incredible. And when it comes time for me to make those kinds of decisions, they're going to be who I go to based on the fact that they've shared information that they held with me. Okay? So 60% of what you share on social networks should be those kinds of exchanges. 20% should be conversational. So these would be things that I would say would be off topic, not really so off topic as my Caesar salad and tomato soup, but maybe the things that contribute to the idea of being knowable and likable. So the old adage, excuse me, that we do business with those that we know, like, and trust hasn't changed even if the technology has. So we want to get to know you a little bit. We want to know that you're not just a business. We want to know that you're not just a robot. So when Zane was born, if you're comfortable with that, and not everybody is, and that's a personal decision, you need to make sure what you feel comfortable with sharing about your personal life. There you go. That's something that would be conversational. Maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing information like that, but you do feel comfortable promoting other entities in your community. Excuse me. So you may leave here today and you may say, not about the salad and the soup, but oh my goodness, the service at Lawtonville's, again, continues to be amazing, right? That's something that's conversational. It shows that you're human. It shows that you're promoting other people, but there's a benefit to that. Now, you guys are savvy, so as we talked about, everything we're doing is to generate business for you guys. So even when we're being conversational, we can still be helping ourselves a little bit. So here's an example. For those of you who are on Facebook, how many of you are actively using tagging, the tagging feature? Do you want to explain it?
Is this like where you mean like checked in? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Or tagging?
Tagging. Like
people or
Mhm.
places in your posts or pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess so. Basically, when you write about something, if you use certain words or you have pictures of people, you can link them to other friends that you have. So their names appear in your pictures and it shows up on their page as well as yours.
Exactly. So from a business perspective, let's think about this. This is a screenshot. I serve on the board of Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. So if we are, as a business, if we are promoting, wanting to get people to know about the Keep Oklahoma Beautiful organization, well, every time that I post a comment or every time that I post a status update and I use that handy little @ symbol, it pulls up this little window like this, right? And so it shows me other people that I'm connected to that I can tag. Here's the wonderful thing about that. Every time that I do that, so here would be an example about Lawtonville's. And I don't even know if Lawtonville's is on Facebook. It doesn't even.
I don't think so.
We may need to tell Michael
I've already talked to
before
you.
we leave. Because here's what I would do. I would go home and I would say, had a great time working with the team at Lester Loving and Davies, and I would tag you. And then I would say, thanks to Lawtonville's, tagging Lawtonville's for a great day. Well, here's what would happen. For me and my business, I may not be associated to everybody that you all are. And I may not be associated with everybody that Lawtonville's is. That message with my business name or my picture, that shows up on their wall. So instantaneously, people who I have not been connected with are exposed to my message in a way that they never would before. So tagging is an incredibly useful way of being conversational, but also getting a little something out of it as well, okay?
And you said you do that how? When you're typing, you type the
The @ symbol.
like a @Gmail or something? Okay.
But you would just do @ and then, like, if you were to do
You get a
E,
drop-down
you get a drop-down list.
Okay.
Okay? Here's what that looks like. This is my husband. 20% of what you should do should be essentially self-promotional. Now, as I said, there is no way to better turn off your audience than to give yourself one of these, right? I mean, people don't like it. They don't like to have that constant bombardment of sales messages unless it's the Sunday newspaper and they're clipping their coupons. But we do need to promote ourselves a little bit. This is what it looks like when you tag somebody. A few weeks ago, my husband has a heating and air company. The city of Edmond has this big rebate program. So what he did is he tagged his business So now this is showing up on his business page. He tagged the City of Edmond, so it's showing up on the City of Edmond page, and he's sharing a link. So without being blatantly promotional that says, hey guys, guess what? We're one of the only few providers who are officially licensed to do this, they're able to accomplish pretty much the same thing by congratulating the City of Edmond on their efforts, okay? So we can be promotional, but we can do it in a way that doesn't feel so, well, slimy.
So do you suggest using Facebook, using your personal account in addition to your business account to create the buzz?
Yes, and here's why. And there's a lot of schools of thoughts on this. And Facebook is constantly evolving. So for those of you who use it for business and who have a business page, you've seen that in the past 2 weeks, it has changed considerably. Well, the good news is for the first time in a long time, Facebook has done something that actually really benefits us as business owners. What has happened now with the new Facebook pages is we can interchange between ourselves and the business, which is fantastic. The reason that you do want to have some kind of a personal presence in addition to your business presence is not only to filter people through to your business. You know, maybe you're active in the chamber and people know your face, but they don't know that you're affiliated with this business. You know, they have that kind of connection, and then you can suggest your business to them. So there's that piece of it. It should not be done exclusively. The reason why is because of Facebook's privacy settings. For us as individuals, those are not publicly indexable. And so what we'll talk about in a second and how social media impacts our search results, we really want to make sure that we have those open. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we've talked about listening. We've talked about being human. I disclosed earlier that I was a huge nerd.
Yes, you did. I'm sorry, you're looking at me.
I did. I am.
I was looking at the slide.
I'm going to encourage you all to be huge nerds. Be geeky, okay? There is a tremendous, tremendous benefit in social media if you pay attention to your numbers. We were having a conversation earlier about people who spend all of this money on these amazing, ad buys. And then they spend the money and they have no idea if it worked, right? With social media, if you are paying attention to your numbers and you're paying attention to your analytics and you have those defined for your business, excuse me, so you understand I need to increase my traffic by this percent or my unique visitors by this percent, or I want to make sure that people are actually paying attention to the information that I'm sharing and that I have the right voice. Be geeky, pay attention to those numbers. If you are not a nerd, you don't like numbers, find somebody in your office, find somebody in your business who is, because this is how you're going to make social media effective for you.
Yeah, Scott.
I think you guys are pretty lucky.
Oh, trust me,
You know.
I'm sitting here going, I'm gonna have to retire, I don't understand any of this. So vocabulary, I don't know.
Okay, the next piece is to talk about planning. Okay, think about this. In your business, let's say that you've hired a PR firm who's helping you with your PR initiatives, or maybe you have a sales team, a dedicated sales team who are commission-based only. And then you have the people who are actually acting as your customer service people. Well, if the person who's dealing with your customer service are on the front lines and they hear that everybody is really having a difficult time with your product or service, if there's not like a communication plan where everybody is looped into that, then you've got a really big problem. Or if you don't have in place a plan that says, well, how am I going to handle if people are talking negatively about my business? Or how am I going to handle if somebody hijacks my page and is brandjacking me and promoting things that I'm not even affiliated with? How am I going to handle all of that? It's really important as you delve into the world of social media to make sure that you have a plan. You can remember in the past year, I use Southwest Airlines as an example all of the time because I'm fascinated by what they do. So in the past year, they had the whole issue, remember, with the poor gentleman who was a little bit too large for the seat. And what did he do? He took to Twitter, and he was an influencer, and it was a big problem. Or you had the poor little girl who, do you remember this last summer when they didn't like the way that she was dressed, and that bombarded into a whole scenario. Southwest Airlines has been on the cutting edge of innovation when it comes to how to utilize social media, and it's because they have a plan. I've had the opportunity to hear their marketing department speak about this, and they truly have a if-then scenario for just about everything that you can imagine. For those that they don't have, they have kind of like a general idea. So regardless of our business, we have to have a plan. Next is to be shareable. When we talk about being shareable, that means creating the kinds of information that people want to be talking about. So I use these little screenshots as an example because you may not be thinking about this. I didn't ask when we first started, how many of you, if any, are blogging? Okay, great. Blogging is a great example of shareable content. What you have on Facebook, great example of shareable content. What you publish on Twitter is a great example of shareable content. The reason that this is important is because, again, of these little buttons right here, tweet, share, email, etc. We, as consumers, have the opportunity to vote every time we click our little mouse. Excuse me. Every time that we retweet something, every time that we say that we like something on Facebook, what happens is that information is then shared with our entire network. So that blog post that you unwillingly did, pardon? Occasionally. Excuse me, is then shared to your entire network. Well, if I'm not connected with you and I'm not even in the market for your services, down the road when I am, because of the whole idea of trust that we talked about at the very beginning, I'm going to know that you are somebody who is an expert in this field because I've had the virtual recommendation of one of my friends clicking that stinking little like button, okay? It's really important to make sure that we're creating the kinds of content that's shareable. From a functional point of view, it's really important to make sure that that's integrated through your website as well. So for those of you who do have an active web presence, you want to make sure that your sites include those little buttons that say share this or add this, etc. And you also want to make sure that those are considered above the fold. So in other words, that you make it as easy as possible for the consumer to share that information. One important note about that, for any of you who have websites right now that do use the Facebook button, that has changed in probably about the past 2 weeks. So if you're not the person who manages your website, you should put in a call to your developer to get that changed. Okay, so why does all of this information matter? We've talked a lot about search results and kind of the customization of it. When we search for things today, beyond what we already talked about of how our results are customized, we know that instantaneously search engines are pulling from social sources. So if you type in something like social media there, the very first thing that you see is Wikipedia, okay? There's nothing more social media than Wikipedia. You'll see images, you'll see news sources, you'll see data that is pulled, again, from that information that is constantly evolving instead of static information. So things like blogging, things like sharing Facebook posts, all of that that's publicly indexable creates that content. Okay? Again, as we talked about, the benefit of that when we look at that from a personalized perspective. So beyond just the newspaper and beyond the images, now our search results are pulling very specifically from those that we are connected with. Okay, how many of you are overwhelmed now? A handful, well good, okay.
I'm just like, I have to go home and do multiple.
Well, here's what I want you to remember. For all of this, so, we talked about being human and listening and being shareable. For all of those things, this is what I really want you to think about that. So those are the things we need to remember. Here's how we need to apply it to our business. We need to be thinking in terms of influence, in terms of community, in terms of content, in terms of defining success, and in terms of real time. So, what does influence mean online? Does anybody pay attention to clout? Does anybody know what I'm talking about with clout? It's fascinating. Expect that in the next 6 to 9 months, you will have, people will be choosing their mates, people will be choosing their employers and employees based on their clout scores, okay? Clout is your online influence. It's fascinating. It pulls it from Twitter, it pulls it from Facebook. Already today, if you were to go to Las Vegas and you tell them your clout score, you're gonna get a discount. It's kind of like being a big roller. I mean, it's crazy. For us as business people, we need to be thinking about ourselves in terms of influence. So in other words, what is our influence level for others? But we also, particularly as we're kind of putting our feet in the water when it comes to social media, we need to be identifying who are those that are influential that we can be a part of. I encourage people to think about it in 3 ways. I encourage you to think about it in terms of people that you can learn from, people that you can sell to, and then people who can help promote you. Let me give you an example. As I mentioned, I'll pick on my husband again. He has a heat and air company. Last summer, a very prominent realtor in the city who has a very high influence level was looking for somebody to provide heat and air services. Well, Kevin jumped in, answered, provided the service. That realtor said how great that they were. Within the next 2 weeks, so this is the heat of the summer, because that particular gentleman was the influencer, that company got more business from that single tweet than they did from their entire season of direct mail, because that man was an influencer, okay? So think about those as we're building those relationships. They need to be authentic, but certainly if somebody has influence, it doesn't hurt. We also want to think about our community. When I talk about community, it's not just the things that we are involved with in our local community, but it's creating a community around our brand. Just like we talked about a moment ago, having people who are acting as your brand evangelists and who are helping to promote you. When we have a community around our brand, it makes our jobs a lot easier and it makes it more effective. Again, we trust a total stranger more than we do a business who's saying how great they are, right? So when we have other people who are being a part of our community and who really feel invested in our success, this is where we see growth. There's a local hair salon called Trichology. Are any of you familiar with them?
I go there.
You do? How did you find out about them?
My hairdresser used to be an instructor at a school, and
Okay.
I followed her there.
Okay. Are you?
It was an account.
An account, okay. They are a fascinating example, and I have no affiliation with them. They're not clients. I just have enjoyed watching them. They have created this community around their brand, where if you were to search Trichology, say on Twitter, you will find twice as many people who are promoting them than they are promoting themselves, simply because they have built a very, very strong community around their brand. We spent some time talking about content. We really need to shift our way of thinking and think of ourselves as content curators. So the blog posts, the Facebook posts, etc. All of that comes together to where we control a good part of the messages that are out there for us. So going back to where we were talking about the old rules and the new rules, remember I said the good news is we still control our message, right? The reason that we still control our message, here's an example, like if you were to search for me, and I'm just using this as an example, if you'll notice you have my website, you have my Twitter, you have my Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have social presentations that I've done. You see that the data that is out there is pulling first and foremost from social networks. So as we're trying to control the message about ourselves, so in other words, who is the best pediatric dentist in the Edmond area, there's a lot of that information that you can control by simply being the right kind of content publisher through those different networks, okay? Okay, The ultimate question, this is the question I get 9 times out of 10. Okay, Heather, this all sounds really fine and good. I'm busy and I've got to justify every single dollar that I spend, right? Yeah. It's the ROI question. You do have to be thinking about it, you're savvy business owners. We were talking earlier about kind of the pasta on the wall approach, where so many people think that there's something new out and okay, I've got to run out and I've got to do it. And then they don't take the time to really think of how it ultimately impacts their business. When we talk about ROI, you have to have a plan. You would never hire a accounting firm without having metrics behind it, or a PR provider without understanding the metrics behind it. The same thing with your social media implementation. Very first, you have to define your success metric. For some of us, that may be increased sales, it may be increased leads. If we're in service-based businesses, it may be decreasing some of our customer service costs. If we don't have a place to measure, we will never be able to define success for ourselves. So first is to define your success metric. We already talked about the importance of being geeky. Again, I want you to really wrap your head around your inner nerd. I promise, it's okay. Data, be thinking about it, it's your friend. We need to be thinking about data not only in terms of those hard and fast numbers, so the unique visits or the number of click-throughs for your links as you're finding your voice, but also the not so hard numbers. So identify what your current benchmarks are and say, okay, from here, my brand sentiment is here, I want to see it increase here, okay? Again, the beautiful thing about social media is you have the opportunity in real time to monitor your message, to tweak it until it's right, and to be paying attention to the data as it is happening in real time to make sure that you're getting the most out of your investment, okay? This is something that you'll need to be constantly doing. Social media is a constant evolution. Your commitment to your business and your commitment of whether or not it's working for your business also requires that kind of a commitment. All right, we have to be thinking in real time. The difference in social media as opposed to other traditional marketing initiatives is that it happens in real time. So how many of you at your offices have a marketing plan that maybe has a 6-month, year, 5-year plan? Right. This is happening in real time. We do not have the luxury of saying, oh goodness, so-and-so, that darn Charlie Sheen tweeted about Tiger Blood again. How am I going to tie that into my business? We don't have time to be thinking about those kinds of things. We need to be reacting in real time. So this goes back to the idea of listening and planning. So we need to make sure that we are using the tools available to us to identify not only when people are talking about us, but whether that's good, bad, or negative. You may remember that I mentioned the tool of social mention. This is an excellent, excellent tool to help you react in real time. What I suggest is at least every single day that you plug in your necessary keywords. What it will tell you is it will tell you mentions. This is, if you're an insurance company like State Farm, it would tell you the number of mentions. It would tell you the sources, so if people are talking about you on Facebook or on Twitter or LinkedIn, etc. And it would tell you what the top users are. The benefit of that is that it allows you to, again, identify who those influencers are, identify when you have a problem before it becomes a problem. He's like, Heather, wrap it up already.
He's very intrigued.
Now, here's the thing about that. So all of that reaction in real time, it's uncomfortable for a lot of us. It's uncomfortable, I would suspect, and I don't know this to be true, and maybe for some of you that have a legal background, where you're thinking, your wheels are turning and you're thinking, oh, wait a second. Some of those reactions in real time really have long-term implications, and I'd encourage you all to visit with the team from Lester Loving and Davies about some of those implications. However, for as much as it seems like it may be a burden, it is truly, truly a tremendous opportunity, again, if you're savvy enough to know how to tap into it. One of my very favorite things to do when somebody is saying, Heather, I really don't think that Twitter is going to be helpful for my business, or Facebook is going to be helpful for my business. Take a moment and do a quick search for the phrase customer service. What you'll find is that people who are out there, yes, you have some bad seeds out there who will be the first to spread that negativity. You want to act in real time, you want to jump on that and turn that negative influence into a positive influence. But the reality, just like we were talking about the hair salon a moment ago, is you will have more people who will be acting on your behalf. When you do something good, human nature is we want to tell people about it. If the UPS man tells you to have a good day and you have your choice between, where you're going to ship your next package with, you're going to remember that. But beyond that, we're going to share it with people. So do a search for the phrase customer service if you doubt me, and you'll see exactly this, where people are sharing the good and the bad. 1 o'clock mark, because I really wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time. This is a lot of high-level information. I want to spend some time answering any questions that you all have so that we can specifically apply some of the things that we talked about to your business.
I have one that has happened to our firm fairly recently. You know these places like Marketplace and these like information gathering kind of sites, and they just plunk your firm in there and you have no relationship to them at all? We had one of those, and I can't remember which one it was, and I was Googling our name to see what's going on. One of these places said that we were a psychology company. We were a psychologist, and had our name, had our location.
Well, it's
everything's
just crazy.
It's just crazy. But that's very good.
Are you sure it didn't say we needed something?
Yeah. Well, okay, I was not gonna go there. But wow, I mean, that's pretty shocking. That's not what we do, and that's out there, and I'm not sure, one, how do you fix that, and two, how do you, we need to be thinking about that all the time. So as you're talking about, managing our product or real time, or brand real time, wow. How do you get rid of that, and how do you get off those sites, or how do you make that better than that was?
That's a great question, and it happens, so you're talking about, so this is something that's like an aggregation of
It's kind of what it
firms.
was. It's like
Yeah, it's just an aggregation site, they just pull
they call it Marketplace, or
phone book
something like
listings
that.
and all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Then they want you to pay to own your listing.
Ugh, that's so ridiculous. Okay.
But we're not psychologists, seriously.
But for many of us in this room, that particular scenario may never happen to us. But what may happen is, and again, going back to Google and Google Places. So for example, have you ever searched for something and then you see if you're searching for Lawton Bills and you see Lawton Bills and then you see the map. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's your Google Places page. That is something which is operating very similar to what you're talking about. This is something that the search engines are aggregating all of this information, all of the data that's online, and putting it out there to be publicly available. You do have the opportunity to control that, specifically with Google, and I want to spend a moment talking about that because it applies to most of us in this room. If you have not already claimed your Google Places local listing, the second that you leave here, you go home and you do it, or back to the office and you do it. It's very simple to do. When you go search for your business, if you have not done it, you'll see a little notification that says either it's owner verified or do you own this site. It is pertinent that you do this. I have had clients who, somewhat similarly, have had competitors hijack their Google Places listing. I have had people include other complementary businesses. It is something that you are being foolish if you don't take 30 seconds to do that. If there is misinformation that's out there, the first thing that you need to do, and especially in this case where it sounds very clearly like it's a scam, if they're trying to get you to pay to do that, then that's a problem. But they should have the opportunity for free for you to be able to correct that listing. If you can't, where did that show up in your search results? Do you remember? Was it like 1 or was it like 30?
It was probably on the second page.
Okay.
I was looking at all of them to see what they look like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember that everything that we share, everything that's publicly available, remember we talked about the importance of content curation. Everything that we put out there influences our search results. If something is out there, and the flip side to that is every tweet, comment, post, etc. is out there forever. So don't ever post anything that you would not want to be in a permanent Google sphere forever and ever and ever and ever. But as a content curator, you have the opportunity to influence those search results. The more content that you put out, the more optimized content that you put out, those search results will continue to decrease. So you will never be able to get rid of it, but if it's ultimately on 15 of those search results, most of us, as we're searching for things, never go past the second page.
When we're talking about blog posts and
Yes.
blogging, does it always need to be, I'm a lawyer, should I always blog about law, or can I just blog about things I'm interested in? And what does that do? Because you're talking about being human.
Yes.
Do I only want to be human in my legal post, or can I also do, other things?
It's really, there's not a right or wrong answer to that. It's your personal preference. And it also depends on what your goals are. So if you are blogging because you are trying to increase your client base within a particular demographic in this area, then yes, you want to be associated with the things that are related to your business. Keep some of the personal things for that 20% that we talked about for social media. If that is a part of you, but you also maybe have a desire to someday be an author, and you want to write world famous cookbooks and be on the Food Network, then then absolutely, share that personal side. There are very few instances where sharing your personal side will prevent people from doing business with you. Kind of the caveat that I always say, even though we talk about being human, is you have to be mindful of how people make buying decisions. So for example, if you are in an industry where if you have a very strong political opinions, and that may impact whether or not somebody would hire you, that's a taboo subject. Religion, those kinds of things, but that's a personal decision that everybody has to make. And again, it's going to be there forever.
I have a frequency question.
Yes.
As someone that is wanting to put our story out there but not annoy people with it.
Yes.
I mean, is there a minimum or maximum number of times that's too much or not enough to post homeowner stories, or, where people aren't gonna quit following you because you're on that all the time, but what, is there a suggested frequency?
It really, yes and no. I'll give you a ballpark. I would say, for example, Facebook once a day. I would say Twitter 3 to 5 max. The reason you do it more frequently with Twitter is because you talk about real time. If you're following 1,000 people, the likelihood of your message getting lost is very prevalent. For blog posts, again, that depends on your business. I would say minimum once a week, ideally a little bit more based on what you want to do with your search results. However, this is where, remember we talked about being nerdy and geeky and all of those things that I just love. This is where this really comes into play. By paying attention to your data, you'll be able to really identify what's the right voice for you and your business. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are posting, you do a homeowner story, and you have a link to that. Well, if you're using the right analytics, you'll be able to tell, okay, this particular post that was done at this particular time on this particular day received this many click-throughs. So this is something that's really working for me. But my 13th post that I posted this day, nobody clicked through. Well, then they're tired of you. So if you are using the right kind of data, you would be able to have a better understanding of what your voice is. So you tell me a little bit more about who your demographic is. Who would you, are you trying to get, I know it's a not-for-profit organization.
Issue, and then eventually
Donors, right, exactly. But those are the kinds of feel-good stories that really help people understand what it is that you're doing. So you're like the prime example of that conversation that we had earlier today about that nice balance between information and self-promotion. By sharing the stories of what you all do as an organization, it's promoting who you are without being, hey, give me your money. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, I just didn't know how often, just shoot for.
Other questions? I'm not that good. So if you have questions later after you're processing all of this information, please feel free to reach out to me. On Twitter, you can find me at H. Lytle, and on Facebook, I'm also H. Lytle. You can email me. My website is hvmsolutions.com. Again, this presentation will be loaded there, so should you have any questions. But really, if you have questions, reach out, find me. This is a, it's not rocket science. It's not complicated. It really isn't. So for any of you who were raising their hands whenever we said, are you feeling a little overwhelmed yet? Spend some time living it and breathing it and acting on it, and I promise you that you will feel more comfortable. Beyond feeling more comfortable, if you pay attention to the things that we talked about today, you'll see the results. There's nothing more rewarding than having a new customer coming into your office and being able to know in real time that you directly influence that, and much more importantly, it costs you nothing to do that, right? Social media, it's not going anywhere. There truly has been this fundamental shift in the way that we expect to do business with other businesses. So the sooner that we wrap our minds around that, the sooner that we're able to really tap into that to grow our business.